Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night Reef Talk live stream. I've just started laughing because literally half a second before I went live, I realised that my microphone was on mute, so there was a sudden blind panic to unmute. But hello, everybody, please come in. This is the Sunday night live stream. So tonight we are going to be talking about wild corals and why I think they're a terrible idea to buy as a general rule, or more to the point really, why I very rarely buy them. Before we get started though, let's say hello to a few people in the chat. We have Oi Savaloy from Sebshaw. Oh, hang on, I missed one. We've got Jamie Burgess in the stream, one of his favourite live streams. One of the what? It's becoming a favourite. No, this is the favourite. This is the best live stream. Fact. Dan Fielding in the house. I know I've had much better success with Tank-Bred. Yeah, you will do. And there are very good reasons for that. Trevor Rhodes is in. Nikolai Morel is in. Matt is in as well. Decode. Nikolai, another man who's impressed with the choice of topics so far, and that will continue. I've got some awesome plans for this Sunday night live stream. If I get time, I can map out what I really want to do with it, and it's going to be absolutely wicked. But anyway, we'll carry on. Les in the house, mod, admin, One-Armed Reefer, Yorkie, Chris Allen, Lancashire Reef, PJ Goblin, Marek, Reefer Finn, Puscheck, Reef Cube Dan, NSB Reefs, Kevin Powell. There's loads of you guys in again tonight. Too many to mention. Pompey Reefer in, I can see there. Who else have we got? Loads of people. And how are your fishes? Anything new? Nothing really exciting to report, but we'll come back onto kind of general questions a little bit later on. James says, between you and Reef Therapy, it's super close, but well worth a watch. I think we can all agree this is better than any live stream, including Reef Therapy. So we'll have no more debate. Thank you very much. This is the best. Right. Enough hyperbole. Before we do get started, actually, I'm going to try at the start of all of these live streams to show you something I've bought that I think is cool. I've got two things today. One of which, as you guys will know, if you're regular viewers, I've started dosing Calcwasser recently. I'm about to run out of my Seachem stuff, and I bought this stuff. It's made by, who is it? Reef Flowers, and it's called Enriched Calcwasser. First off, it's a stupid shaped tub because it's going to be more difficult to get your spoon in there. But it's enriched Calcwasser, which means it comes with strontium and magnesium. And that's the one downside of Calcwasser, is that it doesn't have any magnesium. So if you use it instead of two-part dosing, you need to potentially supplement magnesium as well. And this stuff has got magnesium in it, as well as a little bit of strontium. So that's one thing that I thought was quite cool. It's 30 quid for a litre, which is the same price as the Seachem stuff. You can get equivalent cheaper eBay stuff for a third the price. But and it'll be a while before I get started on that. But it looks pretty cool, and I liked that it came with a couple of bits that you don't get in Calcwasser as standard. The other thing I wanted to show you was a 3D printed part I bought last week. I got so excited when I received them that I fitted them straight to my tank. I almost held one back so I could show you, but I've taken photos instead. Now I have a couple of AI Nero 5 powerheads, which are fantastic powerheads. Oh, well, not fantastic. They're very good powerheads. I really like them. But you can only angle them 15 degrees, which is basically next to nothing. So you can't really point them where you need them to be. Enter the 3D printed angle. So this is a 45 degree angle, and this is the bit that I've bought. It's a 45 degree angle. It's a fixed angle, and you just put, this is the magnet for the actual Nero that goes in there, clips in there, and then you can just angle it whatever way you want, and it's at 45 degrees. You can still twist the Nero by its paltry 15 degrees, but this thing is absolutely amazing. And this is it at the back. So it's now pointing up towards the top of my tank, whereas before it was just pointing dead ahead straight into my corals, which was no good. I'm not a massive fan of 3D printed stuff as a general rule, but I found a few things lately that have just been awesome, and that was one of them. And I think that's going to be a big thing for anybody who's got AI Neros, because that's the one major drawback. It's from a company in the UK called Reef Parts. I haven't got a link for it, but Google Reef Parts and you'll find it. I'm sure other companies, 3D printed companies, will make something similar. So those are the couple of things I wanted to show you. But onto the topic of the live stream then. So first off, this needs some context. So if you've clicked on this video and you're either brand new to the hobby or you don't know anything about the hobby and you've just thought, hang on a second, corals are dying, what's going on here? I am not saying that the hobby is bringing in endless tons of corals that are all just dying and they're all going to waste and that we're ruining the environment. The reality is that the hobby accounts for an absolutely minuscule percentage of the corals that are on the reef. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction that we actually remove from the reef. That is one point that I'll come back to later, is that wild-caught corals are still not good for the environment, but it's not as if the hobby is ruining the Great Barrier Reef. It's just not the case. So that is the only thing I wanted to say on context. And this started because, let me pull up this, the first thing. So this started with a coral, excuse me, Mr. Longnose Hawkfish, get out of the way. This started, the idea for this video came about because of this coral. So this was I can't remember what it's called. It's an Acropora of some kind. And half of it, the bottom half, is still got some tissue on it, but it will be dead in the next couple of weeks, I'm quite sure. And the top half has completely and utterly bleached. So this coral is on its way out and it will die. I can guarantee that. I could try to frag it. I could try to move it to a different spot. It's not going to help. That coral is going to die. It's toast. And I've had this coral for probably 3 months, maybe. I bought it from a shop. And when I bought it, actually, it looked super bright, really nice colors. And instantly, when it went in my tank, it looked a bit more dull. And now, the position it's in at the moment, it looks really dull. And it's got less and less healthy over time. My parameters are fine. And the other thing, actually, I'll bring up straight off is if you're new to the channel, you might not necessarily know my tank, and you might just be thinking, what an idiot, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's just killing corals. So that is not the case. It's not like I've got a tank full of, here it is, actually, it's on the top left corner there, that's the coral. It's not like I've got a tank full of dying corals and my water parameters are all over the place. Water parameters are not perfect by any stretch, but this is the tank. It's perfectly fine. It's perfectly healthy. And all of these corals, or certainly 95% of them, and probably all of the SPS corals for sure, are captive bred and mostly bought from other hobbyists. So it's not like I'm just some numpty who's got a tank full of dying corals and I'm picking out this one coral. And the problem with wild-caught corals is they are less hardy. It's a fact. This is not an opinion. Wild-caught corals are less hardy. They've got to adapt from conditions in the wild to our synthetic lights flow corals, not corals, salt mix, all these sorts of things, various things that mean it's much more difficult to keep a wild-caught coral. I've lost track of the number of wild-caught corals I've bought. Not that it's dozens and dozens, but I must have bought, for this tank, probably 10 or 15 wild Acropora colonies, and they are all dead. This is the last one, and it's died. Some of them have lasted a bit longer. Some of them have shown nice colors, but without exception, they are all now dead. And what I tend to find is that if they don't die straight away, they lose colors, they fade and look a bit drab, nothing like what you bought them, nothing like what they were when you bought them, and then they fade away and die later on. So if you're lucky enough for it to get through the first week and not die, that's probably just delaying the inevitable. Now, it's not that all SPS, all wild corals die. It's just that they're much more likely to die than captive bred corals, particularly corals you bought from other hobbyists or that have been in captivity for years and years and years and years. So I much prefer to, oh, actually, no, sorry, let's just wind back just a tiny bit. So I'm really talking about SPS corals, Acropora in the most part, but stony, small polyp stony corals, which are the hardest corals, the harder corals to keep anyway. It's been so long since I've bought any wild soft corals, but when I was new to the hobby, and my first corals that I bought were wild soft corals, and they were absolutely fine. And I can't say for sure because it's been so long, but I can say with 99% of confidence that wild caught soft corals are not so difficult and not so temperamental. And for the most part, that applies to LPS corals as well, but that's not necessarily the case with particularly Euphilia that can have all sorts of diseases, brown jelly disease or flatworms and these sorts of things, or just things that kill them off for other reasons. But as a general rule, it's SPS corals. Wild soft corals are pretty much fine, and wild LPS are generally fine, with a couple of exceptions that are a little bit more finicky, but nothing is anything like as bad as the SPS side of things. And this is why I much prefer to buy captive bred, and I buy most of my corals, almost all of them, from other hobbyists. I use a forum called Ultimate Reef that many of you guys will know about, and that's where there's a livestock section where people sell corals. That's where I buy my corals from, because they've been in people's tanks for years for the most part. And if a coral's been in captivity for years, it's been fragged, that frag has grown out, that coral, the frag that's grown out is then fragged. You've got sort of second and third generation corals that have been used to our conditions for a long time. In some cases, in fact, I bought a coral from AAC in Harlow that has been in their care for 15 years. It's a barley green slimer they have. It's absolutely bomb-proof. Well, you know, more or less for an SPS coral for sure. So if it's been in captivity for a very long time, that's my preference. But there is, this kind of leads into a slight discrepancy. So what is wild caught coral? What counts as a wild caught coral, and what counts as captive bred? Because it's not quite as black and white as this is one, this is the other. There are shades of grey, as with most things in the reefing hobby. And I don't really have a fixed answer. The best answer is that the longer a coral has been in captivity, and ideally if it's been fragged, grown out, fragged, grown out and fragged, and so on, then you know it can survive a fragging for a start, which is about the most traumatic event the corals will go through. And you'll know that it's grown out and it's used to conditions and all this sort of stuff. So the further down the line, the further in the longer it's been in captivity, and the further down the line it is, the better. But would you say that if a coral's been brought in by a shop or an importer and kept in their tank successfully for 6 months, a year maybe, does that then mean it's kind of used to our conditions? To a point, yeah, but it's not as good as further down the line when they've been in the hobby for years and years and fragged and broken up and grown out and all this sort of stuff. But it's difficult to say what counts as wild caught and what counts as captive bred, because if a wild caught SPS coral has been in a shop or a frag farm, for a coral farm, should I say, for a year or so, is that likely to be pretty solid? Much more likely, I would say. But it's kind of a sliding scale, and the longer a coral's been in captivity, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So what else then? So the good side of buying non-wild caught corals, for a start, it's better for the environment. We do pull out corals from the wild. It's a minuscule amount, honestly, but but nonetheless, we do pull corals out. And if they're dying and we're just throwing them in the bin, what a waste of a beautiful animal at the end of the day. That's not really my main driver. I think it's very much a good thing, but at the end of the day, I'm quite selfish with this sort of thing, so I look at my own interests before that side of things. But basically, a captive bred or homegrown coral is a lot more hardy, particularly if it's one of these second gen or third gen corals. In the UK as well, and this is different in the States, they're generally cheaper. So a frag of captive bred coral is, generally speaking, cheaper than a colony of wild coral. It's not always the case, and there are always kind of outliers and this sort of stuff. But as a general rule, for a nice coral colony in a shop, you're likely to pay £200 or £300, whereas for a frag, you're likely to pay a hell of a lot less, especially if you're getting it from a fellow hobbyist. Downsides, though. So it's not all red wine and roses with captive bred corals. You tend to get smaller frags, okay? And some of the frags in America in particular, some of the frags are minuscule from what I've seen. We're talking less than half an inch. And in the UK, that's spread as well. I don't think they're quite so small over here, but for sure, I've bought some tiny frags of captive bred corals in the past. And even today, in fact, I bought a 1-inch frag, and that's probably par for the course. In a way, that's actually a good thing, because it's easier to place and locate a good spot in your tank. But ultimately, if you buy a nice juicy wild coral that's size of a tennis ball, that's a big old tennis ball, isn't it? Size of a tennis ball, then it's going to be bigger than a frag. What else? What are the other downsides? You also don't get to see the colony. So one of the great things about like an Indonesian SPS colony in the shops is you can see what it looks like. And a frag looks very different from a colony most of the time, maybe, certainly a lot of the time. And so when you get to see the colony all grown out, you know exactly what it looks like. With a frag, a small frag, they tend to look their best. The growth tips are kind of the parts where they have the nicest colors and these sorts of things. So when you buy a frag, it might look good on the website, or it might look good in front of you in your eyes if it's in a shop. But you don't necessarily know what it's going to look like when it grows out. And I wish shops, it's difficult for shops, but online places in particular, I would love to see a photo of the mother colony for all frags sold. It would make life much, much easier. And in an ideal world, I'd really like to see length of time in captivity, and if it's second generation, third generation, these sorts of things, because there are plenty of shops that will buy, I mean, all coral farms, as far as I'm aware, will buy corals, and sometimes they'll stay in their care for a year or two before they frag them. Other times they'll be a day or two before they start fragging them. So I'd love to see how long they've been in captivity before they were fragged. That would be another really useful thing. Because at the moment, and that's the other downside really, you don't know how long. None of the coral farms in the UK, and I don't think I've seen this in the States either, none of them tell you how long routinely, as in, it's not, I'm not saying they're trying to hide things, and it's just a matter of course, it's not, you don't get a data sheet on the website that tells you how long they've been in captivity. So you just don't know. But ultimately, if it's a coral farm bringing in wild caught corals, those are the people I think should be doing it. They are the experts. They've got more time to dedicate to it. They've got more interest in keeping it alive because it's their livelihood at the end of the day. And I would rather they take the risk ultimately. I think they're more likely to have success than most hobbyists like myself. But also, from a selfish point of view, I want them to take the risk. I think I would much rather a coral farm or a shop take the risk of importing a coral, it not working out and dying, than me take the risk. So those are kind of my thoughts, really. That's basically everything I wanted to say before we get into the chat and have a conversation about it. But the long and the short of it is, wild SPS corals are a nightmare. And I would encourage you not to buy them. And I would far rather see people buying from other hobbyists or from coral farms who are selling corals that have been in care for years and have not been brought in the last 6 months and cut up and fragged. If you've got second and third generation corals, so much the better. So those are my thoughts. Let's have a chat. Let's have a catch up with a chat whilst I'm scrolling back. So actually, do you know what? So I've just seen one comment there that I'll come back onto. So in terms of this coral, and I'll pull up the thumbnail for the live stream instead of the video. So in terms of this coral, then, what actually caused its death is a fair question. I think someone just put STN, slow tissue necrosis, question mark. I don't know is the honest answer. It's in a spot that I have had success growing corals, growing a coral in the past that I then moved. It's not getting blasted by direct flow. It's not getting especially strong light. And I know it's getting less light than it was getting in the shop I bought it from. My parameters are generally fine. My pH is nice and high now. Thank you to Calcwasser. What else have I got? My salinity is fine. 1.025-ish, something like that. My temperature is 25 degrees C, nice and steady. My nitrates are a little bit low, to be honest, and my phosphates are a little bit high. Nitrate is less than 5 parts per million and has been as low as 0. And phosphate is 0.2, maybe 0.3, so a little bit high. So it's entirely possible that part of the cause of these corals dying is my water parameters and that they don't like these conditions. But the reason I still don't think that this is it's not just my fault, it's not just my tank, is because these are all my other corals, or any other coral I buy that is not a wild coral is absolutely fine. This is not an isolated incident. One coral that I've just bought today, it's been happening for years. I've been buying wild corals for years and I've never had success with them. You think I'd have learned by now and would have stopped buying, but sometimes they're just so pretty. But yeah, so I don't actually know why it died. STN, someone put a question mark. Yeah, slow tissue, just slow death. What does that mean? Who knows what the cause is? But I'm putting it down to ultimately, it's because it's a wild coral, and a captive bred coral wouldn't have died in the same way. So let's scroll down and see what's going on in the chat. Yeah. Oh, actually, one point. So going back to the AI Nero angle thing that I put up at the start. Same issue with Vortex powerheads, you can't angle them. And the trouble with those is because you've got the magnets. I mean, this is obvious. I'm teaching you suck eggs here, because you've got the magnets on both sides and the motor is on the outside. There's no way around that. So you can't get an angle like this and apply it to a Vortex. I don't think that could work unless there was some very clever workaround for it. But that's slightly annoying. I love my Vortex, but God, I'd love them to be able to be angled. Even up sort of like 30 degrees would be great. But yeah, same problem. Chris is flogging his wares. Is that the way to put it? He prints loads of stuff. So if you want 3D printed stuff, give him a shout. Siobhan's Reef says, in terms of not getting wild caught SPS, we could say the same with fish. To a point, but a very, very limited point. I got a copper band that was from another reefer and a settled tank eating well for over a month, got high hopes. So I think it's very different with wild caught fish, actually, because I don't have statistics, I don't have figures, so any numbers I say would be made up, to be honest. But I can guarantee that we kill a lot more wild SPS than fish. Almost all fish I buy are wild caught, and I don't often have fish die. The last fish I had that did die was a Midas planing that was 4 years old, and that's about its life expectancy. So generally, fish don't die anything like as much. Wild fish don't die anything like as much as wild SPS corals. And buying a copper band from another reefer isn't always a guarantee that they'll succeed as well. Sometimes they just go on hunger strike when they change tanks. You can feed them the exact same stuff. They just don't like it. But it's a good idea. But it is different because wild SPS corals are far more likely to die than wild fish. Doug from Fag Farm. Neos have the same power as a wheezing asthmatic breathing on a straw. Oh, you don't like them. They're not a fan. The way I would put it is the way Jeremy Clarkson would put it. If it hasn't got enough power, then it couldn't pull a grease stick from a pig's bottom. But either way, I like them. I think they're strong enough. I have 4 Nero 5s in a 150 litre tank because I don't think they'd be powerful enough without that. So yeah, I think you need a lot of them. But for small tanks, I think they're very good. The fish was eating well when I got him compared to other copper bands I've seen. It's no guarantee, but it's a good sign, and I really hope he does do well. Just chuck in as much food as you possibly can. We got Seb wants to know about canister filters. Go and check out Mikey Mike on YouTube. He used one, and Lauren from Simple Aquariums as well. And Gwen, this is the STN, yeah, slow tissue necrosis. What does STN mean though? It's not an identifiable disease. It's just a generic catch-all term. And so, I don't know, it is dying slowly, that's for sure. What's actually causing it? Don't know. I've got no idea. I've done an ICP test recently. I do have slightly elevated levels of lanthanum because I've been dosing lanthanum chloride. But so maybe that's it. I don't know. Probably not, I think. But anyway, the Herm 14 says aquaculture is the best way to go. I 100% agree with you. Much more hardier corals to keep them beginner reef, to keep the beginner reef happier. Exactly right. And if you're a beginner, steer well clear of. For a start, SPS corals are a lot more tricky than soft and LPS corals. But if you graduate onto them, don't go anywhere near a wild caught SPS coral. You will have no chance. I remember when I encountered a real wild coral at the beach, like a washed up one, like a skeleton. Andy says, I find some of the wild grown corals don't die, but they are the first to go if you have a hiccup. Yeah, very, very true. And this is my coral is an example, not of when I've had a hiccup, but everything else is fine. And this is the one that goes, do you know what? No, it's not quite good enough. For whatever reason, the conditions in my tank are not suited to this coral. It's been in there for, I don't know, a few months now. I think I got it before Christmas. Can't quite remember. But yeah, indeed, they're a lot less hardy overall, even if they don't die straight away. Rudra, regular commenter, regular subscriber. In fact, Rudra, you are one of, I think, 3 people who is down as an approved commenter. When I went digging around in the settings for YouTube the other week, I've approved 3 commenters. Sunny Gould is another one, and I can't remember the third. And I don't remember doing it. I must have done it years ago, but you're an approved commenter. So you can say whatever you want on any of my videos, and it will go straight through. It won't get held back. Do not abuse the power. Anyway, then there are LFS. If LFS don't have the ability to farm and rely on corals, how would they sustain themselves? A very good question. I feel like this is a bit like LFS quarantining fish versus not quarantining fish. Yeah, so the whole other story with whether or not fish shops should quarantine fish, but how would they get how would they sell corals if they can't import wild corals? Very difficult indeed. If they're importing LPS corals, fine, but if they're not importing SPS corals, they would need to get them from aquaculture facilities in the UK. Now, in America, I don't think that's so much of a problem. Of course, the demand there is much, much greater than it is over here. But you guys have got endless more aquaculture facilities than we have in the UK. We don't have anything massive scale. And the answer to this problem is to get more aquaculture facilities. And we're not there yet. It's going to be years before we get there. But it's a very good question, to be fair. So, can a 24K Aussie Gold Torch survive in captivity? They are stunning, but don't want to risk killing such a beautiful organism. I personally wouldn't risk it, Jay. I love torches. In fact, you know what? If I can work out how to bring this up I might just show you the screen on WhatsApp, actually. I saw one. I was in the Ocean Project down in Dorset today. Where's the one he sent me? He sent me, here we go. So this is the mother of all torches. And I would absolutely love this one. How's that? Focus on that. I can't remember what it's called. It was a holy grail of some kind. And this is a video from Josh Silsbury, by the way, at Josh Sills on Instagram. He's wicked. And that's a stunning coral. But I love torch corals, particularly corals like that. I recently went looking for a really nice coral, but I steered well clear of 24K torches, Aussie gold torches, based on a lot of people's anecdotal experiences, and also Fan from Tidal Gardens did a really good video explaining why they're temperamental. So they're effectively in Australia, he was saying, they're found in estuaries. So they're kind of brackish water sometimes, other times fresher, other times saltier, and in these really random parts that just our aquariums don't recreate. So they're totally different to the conditions that we try to keep them in. So you might find, and I've spoken to people since then who've said, had one for 5 years, no problem, don't know what all the fuss is about. But as a rule, if you Google it, you don't have to search too far to find people who've had Aussie Gold torches dying. So I personally wouldn't buy an Aussie Gold torch, in no small part because they're several £100s, and I'm not prepared to risk that. So I think that I see Aussie Gold torches as a very high risk purchase. And as Rudra succinctly puts it, good luck, mate. Exactly right. Probably a bit of a coin toss. Bo Peep, we have, I agree to a degree, but I think what you're saying is a bit backwards too, lol. All corals were wild caught originally, and all I've had do well. I think they're better for experienced people like you. So, but experienced people like me, the problem with this is, as experienced as I am, and 8 years in the hobby, I'm not the world's most experienced reefer by any stretch of the imagination, but I like to think I know what I'm doing. I can't keep them at all. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that we should stop importing corals completely. I'm saying that actually, in an ideal world, if I was president of reef keeping, I would make a rule that only coral farms can import wild SPS corals, and that they can't sell them until they've had them in their care for a year. And even after that, they can only sell frags of a frag, so second generation corals. That would be my dream scenario. Practically speaking, that's not going to work, and that's not going to happen. But what I'm saying is that I think that the proper experts, not just a semi-experienced hobbyist like myself, the proper experts, coral farms who dedicate their lives to importing and growing corals, they should be the ones who bring corals in and make it easier for us. And at the end of the day, all of this really is being selfish. I'm not trying to change the world and say that we need to save the reef and stop importing. My my rationale behind this, or the reason I want this, is because I want to buy hardier corals. I want better corals. It just so happens that that will have a better knock-on effect for everything else, for the environment and so on. But that's my rationale. Another temperamental response on the old what's it called, Aussie gold torches, and Roger agrees, not the experience reef a bit, but yeah, you are right, all are wild in the beginning. But that's the thing, and they are all wild in the beginning, of course, but the longer they go down the line, the more hardy they are. So I think we're much better off buying now if you can do. And really, ultimately, this is, I suppose, really what I'm saying is, if you're new-ish to SPS corals, my advice would be steer clear of buying wild corals, wild SPS corals, because they're much more likely to die if you buy from other hobbyists or from shops or coral farms where you know they've been in captivity for a long time. Sometimes that's difficult to know, but you can always ask them. So that's the type of coral I would be advising you to buy if you were new to SPS corals. Same for fish, all come from the sea, but we have now bred them in our tanks. I think what he's saying is that a coral, hang on, I think there might be one of two there, is that the corals that are grown in tanks are. So it is different for fish. The more captive bred fish we can do, the better. They're quite expensive because it's difficult to do and it takes quite a lot of research. But the more the better in terms of wild bred fish. And there'll come a point when there's been the Lacey stuff recently, is there's going to be a point when we get shut down and we can't import anything more. Possibly, I would say. Can't guarantee that, of course, but if that point does come, we'll just have to make do with what we've got and captive breed what we can. Hopefully that will be years down the line, by which point we'll be much better at it. We'll be able to breed fish more readily, more easily, and more cheaply. But who knows? Long way down the line, I would say. Moderator Les, corals from the natural reefs probs might not like a Gen 5 radion at 100%. Very true. For 12 hours a day versus the random weather patterns of the ocean. So one thing with wild caught corals, if you do buy wild SPS and blast them with light straight away, that is a recipe for disaster. They're just not going to like it. It's far better with any coral at all, wild, captive bred, LPS softies, far better to give them too little light than too much light. A coral will survive for months and months and months, sometimes even years, with too little light, but it will die overnight if you give it far too much light, or can die overnight if you give it too much light. Recognize, why would anyone buy wild corals if they don't have to? Especially SPS seems bad for the environment, not suited for aquarium environment, not as colourful. So the thing is, sometimes they are as colourful. That's the thing. And some of the proper nice Indo colonies that you see in shops are amazing. And that's what sucked me back in from time to time. But yeah, if we got to a point where in the UK and in the US, I think you're a lot closer. But if we got to a point in the UK where we don't have to, and we've got coral farms packed full of awesome corals, then maybe we'd be able to survive without it. I still think it's useful to have, and I was talking to Prestige Reef, actually. I don't know if he's in the chat. Say hello, Ryan, if you are around. Talking to him the other day, and what he was talking about was variety. The importing corals still gives you the variety, and there are loads of people out there who go diving looking for the special corals, and so getting that variety in, I still think is a very good thing. It's just I want to be buying the outcome of that a couple of years down the line, and if that means I have to wait for 2 years to get the latest coral, fine. With a bit of luck, it might even be cheaper because it's being fragged up by then. Jay, I'm afraid no one's singing the praises of Aussie gold torches. They're going to die. Roger, I guess if stability of water is in place, then it doesn't matter if wild or not wild. No, my opinion is that is not a correct statement. I think that they're more likely to die if you have swings in your water or if you have suboptimal conditions. But no, I think if your water was pristine you can still lose wild corals. They are just, there's no two ways about it, they're just less hardy. I don't know why. I'm sure there are scientific reasons. I don't think the hobby knows why specifically, but yeah, they are just they're just a bloody nightmare basically. Some people are that educated and don't ask when they are in the LFS. Don't ask, as in don't ask if they're wild or how long they've been in captivity. A lot of people don't know. You might see a coral that's on a little rock, one of these Indonesian Acropora wild colonies, maricultured, i.e. cut off the reef and then rested in theory, in a lagoon in the sea for a couple of months or whatever. And you might not realize it. You might think, oh, look, that looks like a frag of someone's coral. But anyway, aren't. I can't remember. Anyway, we'll move on. But yeah, I think, yeah, fine. Stability with good parameters is the key. Yeah, I do not disagree with that. Rob from the Coral Centre will tell you in person where each coral is from. Nice guy, well worth a chat. Yeah, so he is. I've never bought anything from the Coral Centre, and he tends to cater, I would say, I hope I'm not saying anything out of line, Rob, tell me if I am, tends to cater for the beginner end of the hobby, I would say, as a general rule, and doesn't have so many SPS. Well, it's been a while since I've checked the website, so maybe things have changed, but he will tell you where things have come from, how long they've been in, and all this sort of stuff. And actually, I think that probably applies to everybody if you ask. If you ask in a shop, or if you email or phone, far better to phone a coral farm and talk to them, they'll tell you. It's not that, I'm not saying these guys are trying to hide things. It's just they don't necessarily tell you as a matter of course. And Kevin Powell uses the Coral Centre. Great team, very helpful. Yeah, really nice guy as well, Rob is, and quite a significant size setup in a small space. I did a video on the Coral Centre a while ago, so if you're wondering what it's like, search the Coral Centre and find the video on YouTube. Shabir Hussein. Hi, Alex. In India, I buy AR grade. What's AR grade? AR grade calcium hydroxide for around 600 roos a kilo. I don't know what that is. What's the rupees? Yeah, rupees a kilo, which is around £6 sterling a kilo. That's cheap. That's extraordinarily cheap. Good work. I like that a lot. Well done. You're talking to yourselves. Right. But sometimes it just can't be helped. When we lose corals, they can wither and die for a reason we can't figure out. And that's true of wild and SPS, wild and captive. But there can be times when, in fact, I've got a coral in my tank at the moment that I think it's not getting enough flow. I put a frag of it in a really high spot right in the corner of my tank to see if it would grow out, and it's just kind of bleaching from the top. Whereas the mother colony, I don't know, 18 inches away, is growing like crazy and absolutely thriving. That's been in captivity for years. It's been in my tank for 2 years, maybe. And the frag just dies because sometimes they do. Although actually, I do think I know why that is, but you get the point. And the chump says, Tank-Bred is much better morally. Very true. It's not the top of my list of criteria, but it is true. And it is a good thing to buy from without interfering with the reefs if we can. Opinionated reefer. Andy, the shops don't want to take any sort of hit. No, they do not. Quite rightly. They import corals and try to sell them for really high prices as fast as possible before they die on the shelf. Most LFS can't keep SPS alive long term. So there's a lot to unpack there. Let's get into it. So most shops don't want to take a hit. No, they don't, because they can't afford to lose thousands of pounds worth of corals. They import corals and try to sell them for really high prices as fast as possible. Some are high, some are not. Shops vary on prices, and they buy them. A lot of the times they buy them the same price, not always. And they try to sell them as fast as possible before they die on the shelf. I think that's a generalism. And some do try to shift them on straight away. Others will rest them for 6 months and just let them colour up for a while, because sometimes they get them in the local fish shop and they're dull and brown. But a good shop will know that there's potential there. They'll cook them slowly in the back room and then bring them out when they're looking nice. And most LFS can't keep SPS alive long term. I don't know if I'd agree with most, but there are certainly some that can't keep SPS alive long term. All the shops that I go to regularly and have been to in the past can keep SPS alive long term for the most part. But there certainly are some shops that are less I don't know, specialized in that area, I guess. And if you don't have someone who's a specialist SPS keeper, you're more likely to struggle. Best SPS you can recommend for a beginner. So I think I've done a video on this. I would say my favorites. Well, actually, do you know what? There's a few. So Montipora are probably one of the best ones. There's one that I always forget. What's it called? Pasillipora. Is probably one of the hardiest. I personally don't like them. I think they look a little bit bland, and I think you're more likely to get bored of them relatively quickly. Stylophora are also a very good coral, nice and hardy, nice colours as well. Bird's nest, there are various varieties of bird's nest coral. If you look for Serenatapora Caliendrum, that is my personal favourite beginner coral. I'm looking at a frag right there on my tank next to me, and that's going in my main tank soon. It's so nice, like really kind of nuclear green, not millions of green corals, of course, but Serenatapora Caliendrum is a particularly nice green. There's Serenatapora guttatus, which is a slightly less nice bird's nest, but still very nice. There's Serenatapora hystrix. There are various types of bird's nest SPS that are very hardy, and they don't tend to base out, they shoot up, so they're really fast growers too. And that would conclude the list of corals, SPS corals that are good for beginners that come to mind. If you want to move on and challenge yourself a little bit more once you've gone past those, there are some Acropora corals that are a little bit easier. As a general rule, avoid anything that's wild caught when you're a beginner. But when you get past, if you can keep Montipora and Stylophora and those sorts of corals, have a look at Acropora valida, which is a lovely purple with green tips coral, and Acropora youngii, also known as barley green slimer, which is a staghorn branching proper. You see them on the reef type coral, and a really bright green as well. And those are both pretty hardy. And because they've been in captivity for decades, they are very hardy as a general rule. So AAC sell the barley green slimer that they've had in their shop for 15 years. So it is as hardy as they come. And actually with that particular coral, that exact one from that shop, I would say is probably as hardy as any of the other SPS corals. But there are loads. I think I've done a video on SPS corals for beginners. Might be called SPS corals for beginners that aren't boring, something like that. I can't remember what you were talking about. I think that was about the shops selling stuff on quickly. Recognize thoughts on octopulse powerheads. They can be angled. So this is the reef octopus ones, right? Do you know what? I've looked at them in the past and I've never gone for them. I don't really know why. I suppose because they're not very popular. There aren't many reviews out there, and I don't find many people in the UK, certainly. I don't find many people who have much experience with them. Frag Farm. Doug, if you're still here, tell us your thoughts. I think you bought some maybe 3 years ago when we're talking about how good they were. But they're, I don't know, for me, if my personal preference for powerheads on my main tank is Vortex powerheads. Just can't beat them in my opinion. They're so easy, and then you don't get cables in the tank. On a small tank, I really like the Neros. They're really quiet, and on a small tank, they're powerful enough. Tunsies are bomb-proof and reliable, but in my experience, a little bit noisy, a little bit buzzy. So those are the ones I'd go for. And then if you're on a budget, Jekod. So that's my list of powerheads that I would consider to be the ones I would buy. Never bought an octopulse, a reef octopus, I think it is that it? And there's just doesn't seem to be many people who have done. So for whatever reason, people just don't buy them. Your pick may be worth asking shop if any other frags have done the same, if not rested. Yeah, I know this coral was bought from a shop I know well, and it's a shop that can keep SPS corals. They're excellent, a really good shop as well. So it's nothing to do with their water parameters or anything. And it had been in their care. I'd seen it in there a couple of times over the course of a few months. So yeah, it's not necessarily anything to do with that. I think it's just because. Shabba Hussein, and yes, a metallic green wild caught wall hammer currently costs around 700 to 1,000 rupees, 7 to 10 pounds. Wow, that's a bargain. Metallic green wild caught a wall hammer. Trouble with wall hammer corals though is that if you the branching ones, they've got various different heads that are all effectively independent. So if one dies, who cares? You've got the other one that will be fine. Whereas with a wall hammer, it's just one block. So it's one polyp effectively, albeit loads of them. They're all joined together though. And if one of them dies, the chances are everything else dies. So I'm not a fan of wall hammers, and I've never had luck with them in the past personally. Jay's Real Reef has managed to keep an Acropora and an Acropora, and I'm terrible with SPS. Great beginner SPS and lots of colour. So it hasn't gone brown yet then, Jay. Ooh, burn. Yeah, and Acropora is another one that I think I've got one, but I've not had it very long. I don't know, 6 months maybe, and I've got no real experience with an Acropora. But supposedly they're kind of along the level of Montipora in the easy to keep stakes. John Wright, what's the obsession with SPS? There are beautiful, soft, and LPS corals. Very true. I just love SPS. I don't know what it is about them. I just find them stunning to look at. The challenge is part of it as well, I think. But yeah, you can absolutely have amazing LPS and soft coral tanks for sure. If that's your thing, do it. You get more movement. You don't get any movement with sticks. They just sit there. So yeah, I don't know. I can't explain why. Maybe I should have a think one day and actually think about why I like them so much. But there's just something about them. They're amazing. But yeah, Jay agrees with you that LPS are more interesting. They move. So yeah, for sure. Don't get SPS just because everybody else does. If you love LPS, get LPS. Cool, and they're easier. Tend to be quite expensive though, the nicer ones. I've got a few wild SPS, and I find they take a bit longer to settle. I agree. Yes. I don't have much to add to that, but I agree with you. Recognise, do you think our hobby has a future? Yes, I do. Energy prices, water shortages, sustainability. Yeah, there are enough people who absolutely love the hobby that will keep it running for years and years and years. And it's been growing and growing and growing endlessly. I often see people talk about the hobby coming to an end. I think it's getting bigger and bigger from everything I see. So I don't think it's coming to an end, but yeah, there are problems to be sure, for sure. So shops have bigger electricity bills, much bigger electricity bills here in the UK particularly, and they have to pass those costs on to customers. We have higher electricity bills at home, so it costs us more money to run them. Things are getting more expensive generally in the hobby. And when I got into the hobby, I managed to buy my first tank. It was the equivalent of a Red Sea reefer. It was a clear seal tank it was, but it was a 3-foot 250 litre ish tank, and I spent about £2,000 including lights, skimmer, phosphate reactor, everything basically, power heads. Cost me about £2,000 or less. Whereas now, if you were to buy, I did a video, I costed up a Red Sea reef for 250. It was about £4,000. It was insane. So the hobby is much more expensive, and that's a barrier to entry. When I spent £2,000 on it, that was a lot of money for me. And I was thinking, God, do I want to be doing this? Am I just going to waste it? Am I not going to like the hobby? And if it was double that, would I have got into it? Maybe still. Maybe I just would have gone secondhand. I don't know. But yeah, the rising price of the hobby is going to be a barrier to entry for some people, for sure. And so maybe it will hurt the future of the hobby. I still think we'll be cool, but it's a fair question. And yeah, so what's the fuss about SPS? Seen as the pinnacle of the hobby, but so it is seen as the pinnacle of the hobby, and probably for good reason, because I think SPS corals, you would probably generally say, are the most spectacular because of the variety of color and all these sorts of stuff, the growing patterns, and because they're the most difficult to keep, so they require a bit more skill. So you can be a bit more smug if you can keep SPS and Acropora corals. But they're seen as the pinnacle of the hobby for good reason. But ultimately, if you like LPS, get LPS. Doesn't matter what snobby SPS keepers like me say. Vince loves fish. You only see the fish that made it in, and not the ones that don't through the export process. True, but it's just fish mortality compared to coral mortality in SPS corals in particular is just not comparable. Doug, I have seen 1 or 2 mariculture corals. There is one factor you need to consider. An SPS coral has a delayed effect for bad conditions. yeah, so it'll look fine for a couple of months when you buy it, and then suddenly, well, actually, so like this one, the one I got, it was fine for a few months, and then it died. But the chances are, and that's a very good point actually. So whenever you've got a problem in your tank and corals start dying, the obvious thing is to say, I did a water change this weekend and I used a new salt, so it must be that. But the reality is, all corals will take a bit of time to process these things. So it's probably a change you made 6 months ago. Maybe you stopped using Rowaphos or whatever, I think. But yeah, fair point. Colin Garvey has 2 Nero 5s. I think they are great. Yeah, Doug, they're great. Shut up. Rudra, I agree with you. They are good. I recall a coral euphoria video when he found out a coral you bought may die in your tank, and the seller's saying coral would die too, proving a delayed action is happening. If Abe says it, it is true. They are facts. Abe is a genius. If you don't know coral euphoria, if you've never heard of his channel, go and check it out. It is, for an SPS keeper, it is by far the best YouTube channel around, in my humble opinion. If they are, so this is continuing on from earlier. An SPS coral has a delayed effect for bad conditions. If they are in conditions they don't like, they tend to strip a few weeks afterwards. It is almost always down to poor trace elements. So maybe I've got poor trace elements. I'm just trying to think what my ICP test said. It was 98%, but I can't remember what the trace levels were. But maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe it just didn't like the trace. Whatever it is, the fact is, wild caught corals suck. Revert to the title. Is that what I said? Yeah, actually, literally, the thumbnail: wild caught corals suck. Too much or too little lights. That's not. I don't think that's my issue, because the coral had stronger light in the shop it came from. But yeah, for sure, sometimes it does. Maybe a bit like one-upmanships, like wine buffs. I guess you're talking about SPS keepers. Yeah, for sure. Vince loves fish. I've conditioned a couple of copper bands. You have to feed them things they're used to, like worms, mussels, and clams. Packed feather dusters, husks with good or filled clamshells with food like mastic. Yeah, there's various ways of getting copper bands to eat. That sort of effort. So that's not a one size fits all, copy and paste and you'll be fine. But the sorts of things you're talking about, Vince, I appreciate, because it demonstrates the effort you have to go to. And it's not necessarily do this and it'll be fine. But if you really take your time and take care to care for this one particular fish over all of your other fish and sod the rest of the tank, basically, then you can have success. And Prestige Reef did a video on copper bands recently that was very good, almost as good as the videos I've done on copper bands. Yeah. But obviously not quite. We're going over all this. I can't remember what you were talking about. Maybe he can't either. Maybe you're just having banter. I can't remember. What were you talking about? What were you talking about, Liz? I can't remember what. Well, I know you are having banter. Anyway, Germany Traveller. Good evening. You have a Peninsula tank from the looks of it. A Red Sea one, by the way. What Reef the Sea Forever is also in the house. Viking 0987. Could you do a quick update on the 2 Evergrow IT 5012B? I don't know. I think is B a typo. Any complaints so far? No complaints. They're fantastic. But I am going to be moving them on soon because I am incapable of keeping the same light for more than 2 days. So I'm going to be swapping them out. But there are good reasons. And it's not because the Evergrows are not performing. They're a fantastic light. The problem with, and I'll say this all the time, I'm almost certain I would have said this in my review videos. Go back and watch the 2 if you haven't already. You probably have, and you're just asking for an update. But the spread sucks. So any coral that is directly underneath them will be happy. Corals that are an inch away from the side will get less light. So if you cover the top of your tank in them, they're fantastic. And there's not a lot wrong with them, to be fair. That is a stunning torch coral. That is referring to the one I showed earlier, and it is. You would not believe how much it costs. I can't even tell you, to be honest. It was crazy. It was 14 heads, I think 14 heads, and it was so it's a big old coral. But my God, yeah, I mean we're talking small family hatchback car price. It was crazy, but but eventually that coral, and I mean long term, eventually will get fragged and will be available for more sensible prices. But it was that video doesn't, good as that video is, it doesn't do it justice. I tried to take a video myself and it just didn't look anything like it, but that is the best torch coral I've ever seen in the flesh. And I was drawn to it straight away, and I was like, that's what I want. That's exactly the type of torch coral I've been after. Do I dare ask the price? And yeah, I regret asking the price because I was sick immediately. What else are we going? Are those small torches that they're selling? Are those small torches? What are you talking about? The same coral I've just been talking about, the wavy one. It's massive, if that's the question. Thoughts on maricultured corals? So that's basically what I'm talking about as well. Maricultured is one step removed. Actually, do you know what? That's a really good point. So a lot of the time you get Australian corals they're cut off their frags. They're big chunks that have been cut off, whereas the Indonesian ones are on a base, and you can see that they've based out. And I think that's probably what most people mean by maricultured, i.e., you cut a coral off the reef, you stick it on a rock, you let it grow and settle for a bit so it bases out over the rock, and then it's healed, and then you ship it out. That's not much better for me. If mariculture was doing the same, so getting second and third generations and recycling the same coral, I'm up for that. If it's just pulling corals out of the wild, fragging them and letting them settle for a couple of months or even a couple of weeks in some instances, then it's not really any better, in my opinion. Aussie Gold Torches unobtainium for the rest of this year. Well, that will for sure push prices up, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because they're finicky as hell, and it's one of those. We're stupid, aren't we? As hobbyists, just because something's so nice, we keep buying it, even though we know it's not going to it's going to keep dying. So that's the kind of coral that we probably should just stop importing. But anyway, your aquarium is lovely. Thank you very much. I keep wild caught corals in the dark in sump for 2 days. Wow, then acclimate them slowly, like a reset, in my opinion. Probably not a bad thing. But yeah, acclimating slowly for sure is the way to go. And I can't remember what that comment's about. I find that buying tank-fragged corals is cheaper than wild caught. It's a win-win, to be honest. They are hardier and less likely to die. Yeah, so when you're talking about buying tank-fragged corals from other people on the internet, as in other hobbyists, for sure they're cheaper. And if they're as expensive as they're in the shop, shame on you as a hobbyist for selling for the shop prices. Most of us sell frags pretty cheap, and it's very rare, to be fair, that people sell expensive frags. But yeah, absolutely, they're great. Buying from other hobbyists is where I get the vast majority of my corals now, and it's the way to go. And Doug votes for me as president of Worldwide Corals. Indeed. Hello, Danny. Welcome along to the chat. Bo Peep is back. We all have to remember that we all must buy corals from LFS2, not just each other, or one day we won't be able to get anything, or very limited hardy corals. Yeah, and I would say that I am a staunch advocate of buying from your local fish shop. I buy from local fish shops where I can. I try not to buy stuff online, and I always support my local fish shop, even if it costs a little bit more money, although a lot of the time you can ask for a price match, which I do. But yeah, absolutely, we should be buying from LFSs, and I've got no problem buying frags of tank-grown corals from my LFS. I just don't buy wild-caught SPS corals because I know they're likely to die. So even if that means I'm not supporting my LFS, I'm okay with that. I think I would buy other things from them, but it's a fair point, Bo Peep. I have some free frags of Hollywood Chalice, pick up only IMK. LMK? I don't know what that means, but there you go. Let me know. Right, gotcha. Hollywood Chalice it grows like an absolute beast, doesn't it? If you're offering me, thank you, but I'm not keen on Hollywood Chalices myself. But if you're offering other people, hit up Reef the Sea Forever, and he will sort you out. Can phosphates exceeding 0.2 kill LPS and SPS? Also, would a magnesium level of 1280 contribute to my LPS not looking too good? To be honest, I couldn't even tell you what a proper magnesium level is. I think that's a little bit low, so you might want to bump it up a little bit, but I never test my magnesium. I check in when I have an ICP test and it looks fine. I think that's a bit low, but I couldn't tell you. Supposedly LPS don't do some LPS do better with a bit more elevated magnesium, but I'll just do a bit of research on that one and ask someone who does know. Unfortunately, I'm not a massive expert when it comes to mag levels. 0.2, will that kill LPS and SPS? Shouldn't kill LPS, I wouldn't have thought. My phosphate is 0. It's above 0.2. It got to 0.6 a couple of years ago, and I had SPS doing fine. It won't be good for them. It'll stunt their growth, might make them brown out a little bit, and it could cause them to die. Yeah, sure, but probably, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is I don't think that's the most likely cause. If you're losing corals in your tank, that's not necessarily the most likely cause. But yeah, for sure it can do. So you should probably try to bring that down slowly to 0.05. Reef the Sea Forever, my phosphate was at 0.3. Nothing happened to my SPS. Yeah, and mine's been high for a long time. The trouble with comments like that, and Reef the Sea Forever, I'm giving this as an example. I'm not saying you in particular, but some people will often say, "Hey, my levels are X and my corals are fine." But as Doug said earlier, Frag Farm, well, how long have they been that way for? And wine forward 6 months, are there going to be problems? So it's difficult to if you look online and just go on a forum or whatever, and you see a quick comment, it's difficult to put much weight in it, but there we go. And Reef the Sea Forever does say that mag of 1280 is too low for LPS. Kyle Bonello. Oh, my mouse is dying. That's weird. Bought one head of 24K Aussie Gold Torch last year. It did split into 3 heads. So far, so good. Heard a lot of people saying they die a lot. And this is the thing. So that if you watch the Tidal Gardens video, he'll tell you that some will be absolutely fine for years and years and years, and others will just go kaput straight away. So it's a coin toss. And all of these corals are a risk. And even with wild SPS corals, they're not all going to die. But some of them are more likely than others. Rudra, no red devil to phosphates from my understanding, but Euphilia do like mag. Fragbox corals keep above 1450, which is where Aquaforest recommends. Oh, whereas Aquaforest recommends 12 to 1400. There you go. Lots of answers. As always, there's various different answers, but it sounds like from a straw poll of 2 or 3 people here that low mag is not good for LPS corals. And that, did I say that? I think I said that. That's my understanding as well, but do a bit of research. And it probably wouldn't hurt to bump your mag up a tiny bit, but just go very slowly, because it's easy to bump your mag up a lot in a short space of time, as I found out a few years ago when I bumped it up massively and I was trying to creep up very slowly. Are those mini torches I've been? I can't. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Where's your whiskey tonight, Mr. Reef Talk? It's here. It's vodka, and it's not vodka. It's water. So last time I had the whiskey that was actually Red Bull, I kept coughing and it was really irritating. It's probably irritating for you guys as well. So Red Bull tickles my throat and irritates it. So hence the water. Michael Barkham, one I'd give for a worldwide corals over here. Oh, yeah, for sure. BRS have just done a video in collaboration with Worldwide Corals recently stressing the benefit of aquaculture. That was really annoying because that video came out after I'd said I was going to do this, and they'd made half the points that I was going to make. The one thing they did say in that video, though, that I don't agree with, and that I think needs a bit more explanation, is that they said that I'm just going to have a quick check-in on the cricket. Yeah, all good. Anyone else watching the cricket? 108 for 5 West Indies are. So 5 more wickets in probably 10 overs. Anyway, I digress. So the one thing that they did say that I think needs a little bit more explanation, get rid of that so I'm not distracted, a little bit more explanation, was that they said a frag of a homegrown coral effectively won't lose colour unless your water parameters are awful. So basically, you're more or less guaranteed that it will stay the same color. I don't think that's true, actually. I think it's less likely to lose color, but it's not like it won't do. So I think that's the only thing I would say in that video that I thought, no, that's not quite true. It needs a bit more explanation. But yeah, if you didn't see it, I think it's called Part 2. It's on the Worldwide Corals YouTube page. I think it's called Part 2 of the BRS tour or something like that. I can't remember. But the guy who runs Worldwide Corals, I can't remember his name. He knows a lot about it, obviously, a lot about keeping corals. And if you watch enough videos with him in it, he did a long live stream with Ryan and Randy recently on the BRS channel, And there were some useful things in there. But yeah, I would love one of those. I would love a WWC over here too. I agree with you. Siobhan Reef. Anyone going to Finest Fest on 9th to the 10th of April? There's a shop, right? Finest Aquatics. I won't be going, but Ryan Shackleton will. You better get shop. You get better shops down south. Guess I'm just talking about Scotland, lol. Yeah, what's Nessie's Lair like? That's the only one I've heard of up. Oh no, there's an online one as well, isn't there? What's the online coral shop in? I haven't got it saved anymore in Scotland. It's like corals.com or something. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, yeah, we do have some good shops in the south of England, really. In particular, the Ocean Project in Dorset, AAC in Harlow, just north of London, and Reef Dreams in Winchester, although I've not been there for a while, to be fair. But there are some cracking shops down south. AAC, indeed. Oh, AAC are trying. Oh, I wonder if you're talking about Coral Freaks, #2, the Coral Show. Forest Fire Digi. I think, are you recommending beginner-friendly SPS corals? Because if you are, I would agree with that. Forest Fire Digi is a good one as well, because that's got a green skin with red tips. So the reason that's good is that it will just look in a normal tank. If your tank is a bit rubbish and the water's not very good, it will just look red and it will probably be okay. But when your tank is on point and you get it right, you'll get these green tips coming through, and the better your water quality, the brighter these green tips will come. So that's a really good beginner SPS coral, because it will be pretty hardy and it will probably be okay, but it will also tell you when you start to get things right and you start to turn the corner from just about managing through to all the way through to corals thriving. So good shout if that's what you were talking about. Admin Les. Look at a big chain. The SPS look rubbish. There are 2 that do it well. Then go to a place like the Ocean Project and look at the SPS there. Even at the Ocean Project, it's a great shop and I love it there, but I still wouldn't buy necessarily wild SPS from them because it's wild corals. I think they probably care for them better than most shops. But I don't care where it comes from. I don't care if Worldwide Corals have got wild corals in. I don't care if it's the most skillful reef keeper in the world. I personally just don't like wild SPS corals. But there we go. Siobhan is going to Sunday's Finest Fest event. I think that's just like a shop meet, is it? It's not like a big coral event. It's just like just a few people meeting up at a shop. I don't really know about it, though, to be fair. Ryan, you are still going. Excuse my ignorance, who are AAC? Michael Barkham. If you live in the south of England, you are in for a treat. AAC is Advanced Aquarium Consultancy. It is probably the best shop in the UK, certainly of the ones I visited, and I've been to a couple in Manchester, so I've ventured up north a little bit. Certainly the best shop in the south of the UK, or one of the best shops for sure. It's in Harlow in Essex. Cracking place. They expanded recently. If you're in England and you're within, I don't know, a couple of hours drive of AAC, head down there. They're fantastic, and they're a good bunch as well. They're a good laugh, and they're nice people. And you've had an answer already, but I hope my longer answer is helpful for you. You're already on it. Price point is way too high for me. If you're talking about AAC, I'm not sure I can tell you what their prices are like. I've bought plenty of stuff from them before, but I've not compared them as such. I've not gone in thinking, are they expensive? I don't think they're mega expensive. They're not cheap for sure, but they're good. And that's probably why it's worth going. Doug from Flag Farm rates Octopumps very highly, going back to the conversation we were having early. They are the best pumps out there. Full stop. That's it. Cantosaurus? Is that a little dinosaur thing? Buying wild acans was a huge mistake. Did they go red? I got super overcharged and they both receded while my other 3 acans were doing great. Yeah, so there you go. Even what they called wild LPS corals aren't necessarily great. John Wright, maybe we should think it's good that experts keep SPS as a Noah's Ark type thing when we ruin the seas. Yeah, maybe. I don't know how many SPS keepers there are out there to feed the hobby, but yeah, for sure, it's the more we've got out there, the better. And Reef the Sea Forever got a real nice Acropora Jason Fox. I've got a, what is it? It's a goldenrod Acropora, and it's all right. It's a bit, it's kind of yellow, but kind of green as well. And it's, I don't know, it's okay without being spectacular. I'm not massively keen on Acropora, actually. It's a funny sort of shape and pattern to it. And I think I prefer Acropora. Well, I do prefer Acropora, but anyway, my personal opinion, take it or leave it. The obsession is the challenge and the color morphs. Yeah, the color morphs, just so you get so many different colors in SPS for sure. I think the future is what worldwide corals are doing. I'd love that if we could do that over here. Are doing for LFS. They must have a massive reef tank and frag off it. Yeah, they do. Yep. So people can see the mother colonies exactly and what their frags will end up as. And you get that in AAC as well. They've got a big display tank, and there are frags. They sell frags from their big display tank, so you can see what the mother colonies look like. That's not often that you get that in local fish shops. Another reason it's better to buy from hobbyists, because you can go and see their tank and see the mother colony, all that sort of stuff too. I prefer SPS, but I do have a lot of LPS in my tank for movement, for sure. Who doesn't like a bit of movement? Geo Reef is currently in the middle. Nice avatar, by the way. Nice photo of your clowns. I'm in the middle of an algae outbreak. Do you think it would be a good idea to cover the highest parts of my tank with some SPS to stop algae growth? No, I don't. When you stop algae growth, what do you mean? As in to branch out and stop the light, or to soak up all the nutrients? Whatever. No, I don't think that would be a good way to do it. I'm sure you're testing your nitrate and phosphate and you're getting those under control. But the way to deal with algae, in my opinion, I've done a video on it, I think. Pretty sure I've done a video on algae. I must have done. But manually get your parameters back in check. Manually remove as much of the stuff as you can, and buy something that will eat it, like an urchin or a tang or a foxface, that sort of thing. And actually, I find, do I find this? I think more corals are more likely to soak up some of your other nutrients as well. So having more corals isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you've got to balance that against the fact that if your tank is overrun with algae, you put a coral in, it's likely to get overrun by the algae. So, but I would certainly start with an algae-eating fish or an urchin. Urchins are fantastic. The little blue tuxedo urchin should be in every single tank. I'm not sure why, but I really like beginner SPS. It's just a coincidence, but really nice stylos and bird's nests are just amazing. Happy days. There you go. And if you love it, go for it. And so some of the bird's nests are lovely. It's just I don't know what it is about Acropora, the growth patterns and that sort of stuff. But yeah, some of the bird's nests are really nice. And Serenatapora Caliendrum, which I'm going to show you for those of you who don't know, Serenatapora Caliendrum is just, oh man, it's so nice. Right, that's a good photo of it actually. Let's bring that bad boy up. I've taken a better photo. I just don't know where it is. But anyway, this is a Serenatapora Caliendrum, and that's not the world's best photo of it, to be fair, but it's about the best I can find. Aqua Snack, where's that? That must be in America. Oh no, .co.uk. There you go. They've got it. £23 ex VAT. So 30 quid for a frag of that, I think, is a fair price. What else have they got? It's just a nice coral. It looks better than that, in my opinion. But yeah, lovely, lovely coral for sure. What else do we get? Yeah, and Dharma Bum, no geo, address first why you're getting the algae. Yeah, that's the underlying cause is the first thing to address anyway. Red Devil, all parameters good besides mag and phosphate. Corals unhappy, slowly dying. Did ICP, no heavy metals. Good news. There's a couple of trace elements on the low side. Why my corals dying? I'm confused. Oh, the trouble is there's just so many questions I want to ask you. That it's really difficult to advise. But are you doing water changes? What's your filtration like? What other corals have you got? Where are you getting your source water from? Are you making it yourself? If not, what's the TDS like? If you've got high phosphates, maybe you're introducing it. What's your feeding regime like? You've got to plow through it and keep researching and find out yourself, which is a really unhelpful answer, but it's probably the best way to do it, I'm afraid. But keep on plugging away and keep doing water changes. Water changes are a cure for a lot of issues. I have a fluval seafaring 3.0 lights. They are man enough for SPS corals. Never heard of a fluval seafaring light. Most lights will do fine for SPS corals, and you don't necessarily need the best lights in the world. But with that being said, a good and expensive light is generally, you do get what you pay for, and they are good. Sea marine, I've just caught up. What did you say? Seafaring. Okay. Anyway, yeah, herbivores. So we're going back to algae eaters. Let's move on a little bit and catch up with a few more things in the chat. I want to get closer towards the end. Alex, you said it. Or what's he said? Is this? Oh yes. Now going back to the comment earlier. Yeah. I got you. Actually, what's his name? All reef, no beef. There was someone who commented on my Tropic Marine Salt video a couple of months ago, who did a super chat. And when I was talking about the price of a bucket being 80 quid, he did a super chat and said for £5, gave me 5 quid and said the price is now £75. I misinterpreted that and thought, oh, right, has the price gone down? Didn't get that he was giving me £5 off. And I went back and watched it afterwards and I got the joke. 3 months later, but I got the joke. So there we go. If you're watching this, I got it. It just took me a little bit of time. Anyway, what else have we got? Let's catch up with some other things in the chat. Any recommendations for a new 5-foot tank? For what? Light, coral, fish, filters? Don't know what. I need more information. What's your opinion on T5 versus LED? Aside from various other things, the most important thing for me is that T5 light looks extremely flat. There's no shimmer, and it's just this blanket of light, and it looks dull, in my opinion. LEDs give much more depth, and you don't get the fluorescence with T5s either that you do with LEDs. So I am a big fan of LEDs. But with that being said, I've had T5s on a number of occasions, and a T5 LED hybrid is the gold standard, in my opinion. Oh, well, not the gold standard, actually. That's probably metal halides. But a T5 LED hybrid is my perfect solution for lights, because you get the blanket of light that you get from T5s and the perfect spectrum, but you also get the shimmer, the fluorescence, and all that sort of stuff from LEDs. What else have we got? Let's keep going. Let's scroll down a little bit further. And see 3DPO, you're late. An hour and a quarter late. What's going on? You need to set your watch. I'll put your email address in, and I'll send you an email to remind you. What else have we got? Best corals I have from farm. Best corals I have are from forums and stuff, especially Esox's Space Monsters are taking over my tank. So I bought the Space Monster Zoas from Esox. No, Purple Monsters I bought, actually. But I bought them because I wanted to see what his posting method was like. And I was slightly disappointed because he posts Zoas dry, but the ones I got weren't dry. They were just in very small bags. So they were wet. I just wanted to see how dry shipping Zoas worked. But yeah, I sold them on afterwards because I didn't want to go crazy. But yeah, anyway, best corals, the point making, best corals you have from forums, me too. This one on the right-hand side, is it that? Because that's very similar to the one that I had that died. Yeah, maybe it's that. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, the tips I've got for you are speak to Sean, because he's a genius. Finding the right spot. If you know your light, if you've done a PAR map effectively with a PAR meter, then that's helpful. Otherwise, start it in the lowest light spot possible, move it around. Oh, do you know what? What do I do? I'll tell you what I do. So I find a spot that I think is optimal in terms of flow, so it's not getting completely blasted, but it's getting plenty of flow. It's getting good enough light. It's going to be far enough away from a neighbour that's likely to sting it. And as importantly as anything, it's somewhere I want it. So it's next to a coral that will pop next to it because it's a different colour, that sort of stuff. And just chuck it there and leave it there for a long time. And if it starts to look unhappy after 6 months, maybe move it, but otherwise just leave it and see how it goes. How come veteran reefer? How come copper bands don't get right in the action at feeding time? Yeah, they're pathetic, aren't they? They just sit out of the way, and they're a bit timid and a bit shy. Don't know. They're just that way basically, and they do get better, and they do. Mine is now right in the mix, but at first it's a little bit tricky. Mega Frederick 97, greetings from Sweden. I believe it is late in Sweden. Someone logged off because it was late earlier on. And Christian from Signature Frags is in the house. I thought this video might attract a couple of coral farms with wild corals, because you guys grow, well, you do buy wild corals, of course, but you grow aquaculture frags. So it's in your interest to agree with the statement that aquaculture frags are good. But anyway, hello, welcome. You're talking to Veteran Reefer. So let's get rid of that. What else have we got? Geo invest in some urchins. Wise advice for basically anybody. But let's keep going. I think I'm going to try to get to the end here. Let's see what else have we got. When will I upgrade my Peninsula 500? I think about it from time to time, and I've been looking at the Elos Diamond Line tanks, the 120 XL. There's 80 centimeters front to back, and also the Waterbox LX range. They're 30 inches front to back, which is, what's that? I can't even do the maths. 90 centimeters. So very wide front to back. So I've been looking at those. I've only got space for a 4-foot tank. I do have the space for a bit more depth, but realistically, they'd be mega expensive. Those tanks alone, those two tanks are $4,000 each, which is crazy money. And I like my tank. So when am I going to upgrade it? It would take something serious to change for me to upgrade my tank. I'm more likely to remove a couple of big chunks of coral, big rocks, and replace those with new rockscapes, and then put frags on them and grow them out from over time. Signature frags. I think they should have phrased it that colour they produce is achievable if water parameters and husbandry is good. I completely agree. And I suspect actually if they were sat down talking about it for an hour and a quarter like I am, they would have talked about that, but just a little snippet. And this is the thing with videos like that, you say it in the moment and you don't explain everything fully. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're trying to hide things or they've got it wrong. It's just difficult to say everything properly in a very short video. But that is the way I would phrase it in terms of colour as well. I agree with you. Jamie Burgess. Do you think there will be any more coral shows now that COVID is calming down? I miss the coral freaks, but would love to go. So go on Ultimate Reef. I can't remember what the thread was called. So Paul at AAC was posting there recently explaining how much effort and money went into coral freaks. And from the outside, you wouldn't necessarily think it. You just think he's booked a haul out. He's phoned a few people to come in and do talks. He's got a couple of tables around. There's some manufacturers there. Yeah, it's a bit of effort, but it's not that hard. And it's free. So, you know, how hard can it have been in terms of cost? But the reality is that the logistics were extraordinarily challenging, and it aged him about 30 years. I think he still wants to do it. Rudra, it's AAC. I think he still wants to do it, but it's not easy. And I think the tickets would be probably 50 quid from what I can make out. And this is not, it would hold me to that, but tickets would be expensive, I think. Oh, you've already answered that one. So yeah, there might be one again. There was another one from Amine Aquatics, bumped into me in a shop, and they were going to run one. I can't remember what it's called before Christmas, but it all fell apart. They talked about doing it again at some point this year, but I've not heard anything since. So I don't know. Wouldn't hold your breath on coral shows because it seems they're very popular. For a fact, there's a demand for them, but they're difficult to put on is the long and the short of it. Are there any snails that I've had the most success with? I tend to buy trocher snails. I like conchas as well. I'm seeing what else I've got in there. The Naceria snails, if you've got a sound bed, are good. Probably trochus are the ones that are my favourite. I have Mexican turbos, they don't necessarily last that long for some reason. I think generally people have problems with them dying more frequently, but we've discussed fuel prices earlier. Yes, it will impact the hobby. Yeah, for sure. It's expensive hobby as it is. So the last thing we need is more costs, basically. Taking into account maturity of a tank, what's your benchmark for when you think a tank is ready for anemones? A month of stable parameters. Not a month, no. This is so. I was looking at this recently with my tank that I've got just to my left here, the Waterbox Frag 55.2. That's been up and running for almost exactly a year now. I should do a 1 year update. And my way of telling, and I don't know about anemones. I've never kept bubble tip anemones, which I think is presumably what you're talking about with clownfish and that. But you can probably put them in the same category as SPS corals. What I did was I put a load of frags in there, SPS frags, Acropora, Montipora, variety, and I just waited to see how they got on. If they weren't doing well, I could have put them back in my main tank. But when they just browned out a little bit and did okay, and then eventually after, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, they started to look nice, and now some of them look absolutely fantastic. So that's the easy way to do it, but you don't want to really do that with an anemone that you're going to buy. But no, more than a month of stable parameters. I think the generally accepted principle with not rockflower anemones, bubble tip anemones is that they don't do well in tanks less than a year old, and certainly less than 6 months old. And you need to be doing water changes and just good husbandry. But hard to say. What's my benchmark? 6 months? I don't know. Oh, and Veterinary says 6 months for NEMS. I think that would probably be a minimum. What about Vibrant? So there's no update on Vibrant as yet. I'm still waiting to. I'm checking in on the Reef to Reef thread, and there's been no response from Vibrant, from the owners of Vibrant. It looks like their lawyers are kind of guiding them and telling them, from what I can make out, and this is all speculation, but they're guiding them. And if that's the case, then lawyers aren't doing a great job in terms of customer service. Whereas a company like Tropic Marine, I don't know if they were guided by lawyers or not, but when they had an issue, their customer service was fantastic. Maybe it's more complicated, I don't know, but it's frustrating being this far in and still not having a response. But I think it's coming. I think they've heard back now from most of their tests, so we should have a response soon. But I don't know. There's no real update on that. I know it's not necessarily what you're asking, but whilst we're there, you get your water from Spotless Water. Do you know what? So I went looking at a few people. Some people love Spotless Water. Some people hate it. I don't really have an opinion. I've never used it, but I did out of curiosity. I thought, well, I should really know what all the fuss is with Spotless Water. I was going to go to my local Spotless Water outlet. There's one in Croydon, I think, which isn't a million miles from me. But I didn't go in the end. I went on their website, and I'm going to show you guys when the website loads. For some reason, it's not loading. I'm going to show you guys what Spotless Water is. Did I show you this last week? I'm just thinking I might have done. It's not loading, but it's basically a small brick building with presumably all sorts of filters behind it. But they use a petrol pump. Obviously, not a literal petrol pump that's being used to dispense petrol. It's a metal pump to dispense this stuff. And I'm thinking, for a start, are there going to be contaminants in that metal? Probably not, I would say. But more to the point, if someone, because these Spotless Water is used for car washing, right? So if I think I really want to bring. Oh, here we go. It's loading. Right, fantastic. So let's bring this up so I can show you, because it's much easier if I actually show you what I'm talking about. Oh, and I've had to go onto a different page. Anyway, so one thing is it comes out of a metal pump. I don't want anything. I don't want my RO water touching any metal at all. Thank you very much. It can come out of a copper pipe before it goes through all the filters. That's fine, but I don't want it touching anything metal. And also, I think this stuff is used for car wash. So what if someone's got these containers that they fill up with water and soap? They're putting the pipe in there. It's getting soap on it, and then it's contaminating your water. I don't know. It's just, I personally wouldn't use Spotless Water, and I don't know anyone. I've never seen anyone whose tank I aspire to who does use Spotless Water. And whatever you say, whether it's good or it's bad, I don't know. Maybe it's fantastic. It is always better to have control yourself. So if it's possible to use to filter your own water, I would recommend doing that. TDS is 0 on the reading. Is that what it says on the reading? You can argue about Spotless Water all day. Some people love it, some people hate it. I wouldn't touch it with a bottle. I heard Shimmer Kessels might be king. Oh yeah, everybody loves a bit of Kessels. Our stream is buffering. Look at this. Everybody else is saying it. Yeah, right. So this might be my missus sometimes watches Netflix whilst I've got the stream on, and I tell her not to. But she does it anyway. So that might be it. I'm plugged into a hardwired cable, and I normally get a warning when it says that. But anyway, if the stream is buffering, maybe that's a sign. Let's keep scrolling down. I'll try and get to the end actually. Signature frags. I'd always be up for being a vendor at Coral Show in the UK. However, there seems to be a different culture over here between stores and compared to the States. I suspect I know what you're referring to, but we'll move on. What else have we got going on? Let's catch up. I think we're more or less there now. So I've skipped past an awful lot. Oh, Les uses Spotless. Let me know if you want an account, as I can refer. It's mainly used for window cleaners, and TDS is 0. I don't want an account. I was just going to go and have a look at it to see what it's like. I'm not really interested in it. I'm never going to use it. I don't care who recommends it. I would rather make my own water. I will occasionally give my opinion on it because I just think it looks a bit rubbish to me. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm right and that it's rubbish. It's just, as far as I was concerned, refresh and fix the stream. As far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't personally use it. So anyway, hang on a second. Why would window cleaners need 0 or such low TDS? So I've actually used RODI water to rinse off my car and my bike when I clean them. Because if you clean with soapy water and then you rinse off with tap water, the tap water, especially if it dries in the sun, it will dry up and leave residue because there's calcium and all this sort of nonsense in tap water. A load of birds going at you outside. There's calcium that gets left behind, especially if it dries in the sun, and that's what leaves the little white streaks. And I've tried washing my car and then rinsing it with RODI water, and you don't get the white streaks. So it's great. So that's why they use it, and it is better. And same for window cleaners. I know I'm talking about cars and stuff, but should I be running activated carbon on a newly cycled tank? Will it kill the beneficial bacteria? Activated carbon, not carbon dosing. Either way, no. Let's see if you're having a look. No. So no, you shouldn't. Activated carbon is to polish your water and remove any dirty tannins effectively. And on a new tank, you won't have that. So don't worry about activated carbon on a new tank. And even if on my tank, I've changed my activated carbon. I put activated carbon in for the first time in a couple of months. It looked crystal clear for about a day and a half, and then went back to being a tiny bit off. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't. All you're doing, all activated carbon does, make your tank look a little bit nicer. But if it's brand new, or even if it's only a couple of months old, you're not likely to be getting any benefit. So take it out. Don't bother running it. But it's probably not killing beneficial bacteria. I've never heard of it doing so. So I would be very surprised if it did. If you're talking about carbon dosing, then you should only be doing that if you've got nutrient issues. And I think carbon dosing would be unadvised, unready on a newish tank. Someone posted a comment that you've posted earlier that I skipped past. I did see it. I just scrolled past it. Regarding new tank, I mean, as in 5 foot the tank itself, I'm upgrading for a 4 foot. The bigger, the better, in my opinion. There's more to that answer than necessarily just yes or no. But I would love a 5 foot tank. I'd love a 6 foot tank with. Really though, I think the best thing is front to back width. I'm less bothered about length and more bothered about girth. So the front to back width of a tank, I would rather have a tank that's 2.5 feet wide or an extra foot wide than an extra foot long, is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, a 5 foot tank over a 4 foot tank will open up your options a bit in terms of fish, tangs in particular. So yeah, do it. Might as well try wiping my glass with RO water as well. That's what I do. So I use, they're called magic cloths, e-cloth. They're on Amazon. Search e-cloth, electronic cloth. What the hell's that about? But basically, there's 2 different microfiber cloths. I dip one in the RO in my freshwater reservoir, wipe it on the tank like that, and then do a Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off with the other one and polish it off, and it's fantastic. So that's what I do as well. Yeah. Oh, I'm pretty sure you're. Oh, and Les is off. Cheers, Les. Thanks for modding. You did a fine job. Good to have you around as ever. Sorry, here we go. George says, I'm pretty sure my hawkfish ate my shrimp. I feel like you're besmirching the good name of the hawkfish. Do you have any evidence to support that? If you didn't see it, it didn't happen. Yeah, it might well have done, to be fair. I love hawkfish. Which hawkfish was it, out of curiosity, and which shrimp? They're more likely to eat the little ones. Oh, that's what I was going to ask. Damn it. So I was in the Ocean Project earlier today. I was leaving, and I was just saying, I'm sure I had one other question to ask you, and I was going to ask him about ozone. I didn't. I would love, to run ozone. I've been looking at it. I look at it all the time, and I will do it at some point. I think you might be talking to the other chap, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, ozone. I really want to do it because I love the way my tank looks when I put a bit of carbon in. It just looks so good. But it lasts 2 days, and you can't replace carbon every 2 days. You shouldn't anyway. And even if you were to do so, it'd be a pain in the backside. And yeah, girth and length. Classic Alex Humer. You have Siobhan Reef has a MaxSpec R420R, 180 watt, 15,000 Kelvin light, and that does your RBTA as well. Good. Use paper towel for cleaning your tank. I wouldn't do that personally. I prefer microfiber cloth, but maybe that works. Fritz glass cleaner is awesome. I love using it. Totally worth it. I was using RA before. Yeah, Fritz glass cleaner, I'm sure is very good, but for me, RA water's there. It's cheap. Well, it's not cheap. It's free. Well, actually, no, it's not free, is it? There is some cost, but it's basically free. You use RA water with a bit of white vinegar. Works magic. Although, to be fair, that stuff's probably as easy, isn't it? It's just... Josh Outram uses RO water or even tap water. No, don't use tap. Don't use tap water. I'm sure it's fine, but if it leaves on there and dries, it will leave streaks. But anyway, I'm going to call it a night there. We've run out of stuff to talk about. I hope nobody buys wild caught corals from here on. Of course, I am only half joking, but I hope you enjoyed it, guys, and I will be back next week, Friday 4 p.m. for the normal video, and Sunday 8 p.m. For another live stream. I think I'm going to do, if there's a vibrant update, I'll do a vibrant update. If not, then I think I'm going to do a Kalkwasser update, because there's some Kalkwasser, what are they called? Kalkwasser news that I've had that I need to do. I need to update you with. But anyway, I'll see you next week. Have a great week, guys. Catch you later.